Hey, good evening. Thanks for joining us. My name is Terry Olson with Next Gen Equipment Training here in Golden, Colorado. Tonight's topic is a really fun one, articulated haul trucks, or some of us just call them haul trucks. And what that basically means is they're run off-road, right? So these typically aren't trucks that are running on-road like a semi-truck. We would use them strictly on the job site itself. I have a whole team with me here tonight. Our lead senior instructor will be leading us through a virtual simulation, mini simulations using the haul truck. That's Gary James, who will be our leader tonight. And then with me, I have two senior supervisor operators, many years in the industry. I think I can say that. They're kind of old. But Nate and Danny will be offering some comments as well. And then if anyone has questions, they'll chime in and make sure that we cover all the material and give you lots of good information.
Thank you very much, Miss Terry, for that introduction. Before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple quick bases. Before we would ever get into this machine for the day, we're going to walk around, or do the walk around is what we call it, or a complete front to back, top to bottom machine inspection. So not only are we checking the dipstick for the oil and the fluids, but we're also going to walk around this entire truck and inspect all tires, all hydraulic systems, all steerings, all pins are in. I want you to elongate your walk around every morning from the old style of checking a couple fluids and firing the thing up. So now that we have a pre-inspection completed, we're going to get started, and the first thing ever we're going to do is this puppy right here. The rollover protection features on all these equipment do not save your life if you do not remain in the seat. Miss Terry was just talking about flipping these trucks, and these trucks flip all the time. I have personally flipped these trucks before throughout my years. Most of the time, the bed of the truck will flip over, having a backing issue or a non-directional problem, or a directional problem, I'm sorry, meaning we're backing up on an uneven surface and trying to raise the bed. More than likely, the bed of the truck is going to turn over and the cab is going to stay straight up. Now we can make it a lot worse and turn the entire truck over, and that's more or less over driving or over speed going around corners and all. So the second thing I want to mention is I call the minesweeper. So now that I've put my seatbelt on and I have my key in the on position, I've let the gauges do the entire sweep, meaning the tach, all the temperatures, the fuel, everything is going to do a full sweep from negative to positive and all the way back to negative, or up and down on the temperature levels. I do not want to start this machine until the tach and everything rests back at normal levels. So my tach is at 0. All my operating temperatures are at the temperature that they are at the moment. Letting the minesweeper, as I call it, take effect. A lot of people will get in the cab in the morning after their walk around and just fire this thing right up without letting it do this. Just like your car has a check engine light, this truck will do the exact same thing. So as I turn my key on again, just to the on position, let the gauges do the full sweep. It's doing a full diagnostics check of everything electrical, fluid-wise, temperature-wise, everything in this machine for you right now. So if something was to pop up on the screen, indicator lights or service engine, we would know right now that there's something wrong with this machine, furthermore than our inspection told us. So there might be something inside the brain or the electronics or who knows what, but that's the time that it's going to tell you something is wrong before we start this truck, okay? So now we're going to start the truck. If this was our initial startup for the day, I don't care whether I'm from Florida, and obviously right now we're in Colorado. I don't care whether it's negative 30 degrees or 100 degrees when we get to the job site in the morning. We're going to allow this truck to come up to temperature before we move any bit of this machine. We're not going to raise the bed. We're not going to drive around. We're not going to do anything until this thing comes up to operating temperature. Usually in this scenario or this particular piece of equipment, most of us, in my experience, will show up 20 to 30 minutes early before our shift. So I've completed all of this before it's time to start. We don't want to show up at 7 o'clock if it's time to start running at 7 o'clock and have to do all this inspection and firing up and waiting. So as an operator, it's my responsibility to come in early enough to complete the walk around that I see fit, or that my company has designated that we're going to do, however many checking points there are. So now that we have the machine running, I'm going to pretend like we've given it a long enough time to bring it up to temperature, and my gauges are telling me that right now. I have everything in the middle as far as temperature wise. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hold our service brake or the brake pedal before we take off the parking brake. This is another thing that I see a lot of times in off-road truck drivers, and it's a big mistake on the job site, especially when you're in production cycle. With the parking brake off, this thing can be in drive. With the parking brake on, this can also be in drive. So what I'd like you to remember by utilizing the parking brake is always make it a two-step process. Every time you put your parking brake on, everything goes into neutral. Every time you take your parking brake off, then the second step is to go back into gear. So anytime we are sitting still, including getting loaded, we're going to have our parking brake on. The reason I'm talking about this is my particular haul trucks, the Volvo 60s that I was running back in the day, I was able to leave my truck in drive while I was getting loaded. And as soon as I hear the horn, I would just throw the parking brake off and take off. Well, I quickly realized that that is setting myself up for a disaster or something like an accident to happen. For any reason, if I was to flick it at the wrong time or even not remember that I have the truck in gear, it's going to automatically start to creep forward or even lurch forward. These things have a ton of horsepower. As soon as you let off the brake, whether it's fully loaded or empty, this truck is going to lurch forward just like a front end loader. So I'd like you to remember the parking brake is a two-step process. Anytime it's on, you're shifting in neutral. Anytime it's off, then you can initiate the drive, okay? So now we're going to put it in drive, just like a normal car. I put it in drive, the parking brake is off. The other thing that I've done before we get to moving is I've placed my bed actuator or my bed joystick in float. So as I'm going to travel to the excavator right now to get loaded, I don't have a fixed bed or a rigid bed. What happens in float is it allows the bed to come up and down just a little bit, softening the ride. So when I'm loaded, this doesn't really help. Obviously, I have so much pressure in the bed that it's keeping the bed fixated and rigid. But as I'm empty going across the job site, having my bed in float mode or one up above rest or leaving it alone, if you will, the float mode shows the squiggly lines. The rest is the straight lines. So right now I have it in the squiggly lines to travel with an empty truck, all right? So we're gonna go all the way over to this excavator. He's going to load us in this pond. And then on the second scenario, we're gonna go to an excavator that's gonna load us over the rail or from the side, and we're gonna show how to dump and line up with both of these excavators. So as I drive over to this area, I want you to be mindful of not only am I watching my speedometer, but I'm also watching everywhere around me, trying to give myself a pre-printed plan or area in my head of everything I have going on around me. So just for an example, let's say my boss told me to stop right here. Do I remember everything that I just drove past? How close is the lake bank? How close is the first tree? Where is my path that I just came down? So as I'm driving as an off-road truck driver, one of the things that makes me better than another off-road truck driver is kind of memorizing the topography, if you will, or the geography or the land as we're driving through this. So my first path to the excavator and back, I have a printed plan in my head of where everything is. This tree's here, this tree's here, that was a soft spot over here, so we're gonna move away from that, and it's always gonna be changing throughout the day, okay? So I wanted to make that mention before I drive through the trees and all, that as I'm driving through here, again, I'm memorizing what's going on. If my dozer operator calls me on the radio, or the motor grader guy, or even my foreman, and he says, Gary, you're in the perfect spot, just back up and dump. I don't want to trust my mirrors only. I want to know what I just drove past and somewhat memorize what's going on around me and my job site. So as the off-road truck driver, there's a couple points we're going to make about listening to the radio and paying attention, being on the phone. You're also going to hear every once in a while that it sounds like I've got the jitters going on. That is the chair or the motion platform moving. So as I'm driving this truck, it is also vibrating and moving the chair so I can feel the ground as it's moving underneath the truck. So rule number one is I'm backing down into this pond, okay? Just like I told you before, I drove all the way to those cones just before the grassy area. So as I was passing this ramp to the lake, I inspected everything I have to drive on as I was driving by. And I mean this is what makes a good haul truck driver versus a bad haul truck driver, or a haul truck driver that has many accidents and a haul truck driver that doesn't have any accidents. Me memorizing where I'm driving and looking at that bank, looking down the ramp I'm about to drive as I'm driving past it, I can't stress enough how important that is. All the time I see haul truck drivers just shove their way up into the bushes, flick it into reverse, and they have no idea where the bed's pointed, where they're even heading. And this is what happens. You're going to see an amateur do this stuff. He's going to, or she is going to jackknife the bed all the way one way or the other to get the mirrors to move to see where they are. See, I've already done this. As I drove past, I inspected where I needed to go. So all I have to do is pick a point on the ground. Most of the time, as I'm backing down into the lake, this is the first time we've backed into the lake today. So I'm the first one making the cow path, that I call it. The second time I come down here, I can inspect where my tire ruts are. And in my right and left rear view mirrors, or not rear view mirrors, in my right and left mirrors, I can put my tires back into that exact same tread mark, if you will. So if I did it safe the first time, meaning I'm backing down right now, if this was the real world, I would see the imprints of my tire tracks going down this ramp where I just attacked the ramp, if you want to call it that, or came down the ramp. So now that I've left good tire tracks all the way down this ramp, the next time that I come, I'm doing, if you can call it cheating if you want to, but I'm looking at that ramp for my tire marks. So again, the next time I come, all I have to do is drive past. As I'm driving past, I'm looking to the left down into the pond or down the ramp. If anything has changed, did they widen it? Did they narrow it up? Is the dozer man down there? So that's another topic. As we drive by, and I know I'm going to say this 100 times, if you didn't look down there and there's a dozer man all the way in front of the excavator, and this is the only way up and down, if I'm backing down the ramp and then I finally see him, I've trapped the dozer man in here. Now I have to move out of the way. He has to get out of the way. Then I have to back down in here. So I could have solved all those problems by driving past, looking into the pond that I'm about to work at or work in, and inspect the area. Is it ready for me to enter? Is the hoe man holding the bucket like he's ready to load me? Or is he got the excavator spinning the other way talking on the phone? So I wouldn't want to back down into this pond unless it's my second or third or more times if I don't understand where this excavator guy or operator wants me to park, okay? So now that we're loaded, there's 2 points that I want to make about getting loaded and the reason that I came out of that view and came back into the view. While I'm backed up to the excavator right now, there's 2 times I'm going to hear the horn. One is as I'm backing down in front of this truck, he's going to honk the horn one time to tell me to stop, that I'm in position. At that moment, I'm going to slide both of my windows open. So you have a window on this side and a window on this side. They have a little clip. They just pull backwards. The other thing I'm going to be doing right now is turning my radio all the way down if I have it on. I don't want any phones going on right now. I don't want any music going on right now. And you definitely don't want the cab closed. Now, short of pouring down rain, which you're probably not going to be working in, or snow, you only have to crack it just a little bit. Obviously, if you have a good horn, you can hear them with the windows closed. But the main points is turning the radio down and being able to hear what's going on. I don't want you talking on your phone. We don't want earbuds in. The guys behind me were just talking about that a little while ago. It's very important for my production. I know I'm teaching you the off-road truck today, but I am a hoe man through and through. I love the excavator. So there's nothing that aggravates me more than keeping my production cycles up and it being demolished by people just not paying attention. I understand if equipment breaks or situations change, that's out of my control. But you having your earbuds in and I'm honking the horn, if you're not leaving, I guarantee the hoe man's going to let you know you're full. He's going to bump this truck around. He's going to throw another load of dirt on you from way up in the air, and he's going to get very, very angry. So not only for our company's sake and production-wise, but for the man that's loading this truck, he's working his butt off to keep the production up. We are the people that's hauling from one end to the other of this job site, so we can completely flatten his production by listening to the radio and not hearing horns, okay? So just like I talked about before, right now as I was loaded, my truck is in neutral, my parking brake is on. So right now, I'm going to release my parking brake before I throw it into the forward gear, and I still have my brake pedal or my service brake pressed. So as I initiate the drive sequence or put it into drive, I want to turn it on by releasing the brake. I don't want to shove it in with the brake off, okay? I don't want it to lurch. So nice and slow going up the hill. And while we drive through this course, we're going to talk about the utilization of the brakes or the lack thereof. So I'm going to explain when we go through this job site here, what I'm using to stop. Is called the Jake brake in my world, or a decompression brake. All the semi drivers, as you're going down the road, you hear the semi truck gargling while it's slowing down. That's a Jake brake. Same thing in this truck is what I'm about to utilize. All it does is close a flap behind the turbo and kind of muffles the exhaust that comes out of the engine, kind of retarding the air that it's releasing, or the exhaust, and it slows the engine down or puts a brake on the engine, which obviously transfers into the driveline. So I'm going to go up over this hill, and this is where we're going to have to initiate this. Again, this simulator right now, I'm in a Caterpillar haul truck. Whether you're in a Caterpillar haul truck, a Volvo haul truck, forgive me, boys, but John Deere makes haul trucks too, I think. Komatsu. All of the trucks will have the same decompression lever or the same decompression button. It's just going to be in a different spot. So as I'm going down the hill right now, I'm completely, I know you can't see my feet, but I'm not pressing the accelerator pedal when I went down, and I'm also not riding the brake pedal as I'm going down. Remember, we just got loaded. There's 35, 40 yards of dirt in this thing, depending on the moisture content. There's tons and tons of weight in this machine. While I'm going down a steep slope, the worst thing we could do as far as maintenance and preventative maintenance is just ride the brake pedal all the way down the hill, trying to slow this behemoth down. So this engine brake or the decompression brake is what allows me to slow down without burning the brakes up in this machine. So all throughout the day as I'm driving, I don't want to say I'm not using the brakes. That's a little too far. But I'm using the brakes only for, minor adjustments, stopping in front of the hoe, holding the brake before I move into a gear or neutral, or while I'm doing the parking brake on and off. But 99% of the time, going downhill, even on flat ground, if I gain too much speed, the good thing about the decompression brake or the decompression lever in this particular Caterpillar haul truck, it's up here where your gear shifter would be if you had an old style Chevy truck, or if you have a newer vehicle, it's where your windshield wipers would be. The right-hand side of the column, it looks exactly like a windshield wiper apparatus, and you just turn it on and turn it off. It's simple as that. Most of them have merely a button. It's just either on or off. Some of them have stages. This particular haul truck has 3 different stages, so I can turn it on 1, 2, or 3, and obviously 3 is helping more than 2 or 1. So depending on how steep of an incline you're going, up or down, you're going to want to pick the one that slows you down, to the comfortable speed you need to be at. So while we're driving across the job site, you can see in my screen, I don't have any excavators around me. I have no dozer man. There's no work trucks. There's no nothing. AC/DC right now could be bleeding your ears. There's no reason, unless you have a radio right now or a walkie-talkie and you need to hear some communications. But in my line of work, I would be digging lakes, and my haul trucks would be just hauling them over to the dozer. We didn't have to have any communication in between the two. The hoe man, I've explained how he sets you up. He holds the bucket in the air where he wants you to back up. The horns, what's telling me loaded and leave. Getting to the dozer. The dozer man is a whole nother world. The dozer man is not going to honk his horn. The dozer man is not going to be facing you sometimes. If it's my first time coming to the dozer man, I might want to stop and get out and talk to the gentleman or lady who's running the dozer and get a day's plan, today's plan of what's going on. And I'm going to stop right here because we have a talking point. But the dozer man, if he has a plan and, we're going to dump 5 wide and keep on going throughout the day, if he tells me that, I can speed up our whole process as well as the other dump truck drivers. I can't stress enough how much the toolbox talk means to my crew in the morning. I don't necessarily have to explain to my guys the in and outs of the entire job site and the money it takes and time and all that. but I can darn sure tell everybody what I'm going to do at least today. I mean, we're even better this week. You know, what's our plan for the day? What's the dozer man want for me? What does the hoe man want for me? And it might change throughout the day. But the reason I stopped right here is I want to make a quick point on what I'm staring at in my screen. On the left-hand side, and I'm going to go over and dump in this little area here in a second, but on my left-hand side, I have a berm and a nice safe area. On my right-hand side, what I call a shear wall or a cliff. I do have some sort of a berm built up here as protection, but in this size of a truck, that 2-foot tall windrow that I'm staring at on my right-hand side is not going to stop this truck whatsoever from peeling off the edge of this cliff. So if you're ever coming into a circumstance like this, it would behoove you to hug the safe side, if you will, or hug the side that can't shear off or break off. Now, as I go through this throughout the day, if this turns muddy, we're going to have to cross our paths or move over a little bit. I might have to stop and talk to the dozer man and say, hey, the berm we've built on this, we're moving over, we're getting muddy or stuck near this spot, and I have to move towards the outside. Let's not just drive over there with a fully loaded truck. Let's bring everybody in on the conversation. Do I have time to bring a dozer man over here and fix this? Can I take another route? Is there anything I can do to help this situation? That's the communication we're going to have with our crew in the morning. If I see this on my first load, as I go over to my dozer man, I might get out and just say, hey man, halfway over here, that berm is not big enough to save us. So, you know, on lunchtime or anytime you have a break, most of the time the dozer man or the motor grader guy is keeping the haul roads in shape for us throughout the day. It would be 10 minutes worth of work for him to come over and whip up another 2-foot high or 3-foot high berm on top of that and really safe us up. So just because somebody left it like that doesn't mean it's okay. So if you see something that looks dangerous, point it out. The worst case scenarios, they're going to tell you, okay, we'll fix it later, or give you a different direction on what to do in that area. So I'm almost to the dumping site. As you can see, I just went down that slope very, very slow again. If you're going down a slope that's straight, obviously the decompression brake is saving us from gathering too much speed or momentum as we go down the hill. The hill that I just went down behind me is not only a downhill slope of, you know, about a 3 or 4 to 1, but it was also a huge left-hand turn or a sharp left-hand turn. That's where you're going to flip this truck over or flip the bed over. If I was to go down that slope too fast, obviously, as long as I stay straight, I'm really in no danger up until a certain point of mile an hour. But as soon as I was to cut to the left, that truck, if I'm over the speed I should be for taking the turn, not only would I have just dumped the truck there, but I would have dumped the truck and rolled it into the trees there. So be very, very mindful on your speed going up and down hills. Absolutely.
So just a couple things. One, when you talked about the berm, a lot of sites require that berm to be a certain height, and I believe it's the mid-axle of the largest wheel. So just note that, you know, as a driver as an operator of these haul trucks, you got to note that. And if it does deteriorate, just tell somebody right away, because it is a requirement on a lot of job sites. The second thing I wanted to bring up quickly is the engine brake or Jake brake. Not that we necessarily work when there's a lot of wet weather or snow or ice or anything like that, but keep in mind, even if the roads are wet, when you're going downhill and that Jake brake gets applied or engine exhaust brake gets applied, there's a chance that your tires and wheels lock up if it's muddy or wet or icy, something like that. So you got to keep that in mind too. Just be prepared for inclement weather or inclement just
Conditions.
Yes, different site conditions. Thanks, Danny.
And it should also be noted, that when you have your engine brake engaged, as soon as you touch that gas pedal, it is no longer engaged. So you want to be very aware of your gas pedal when you're using your engine brake.
That's actually a very good point that I should have made. The instant that I lay my foot on the gas pedal, I don't even have to be pressing the accelerator pedal. The minute I even touch my foot on the gas pedal, the Jake brake or engine brake shuts off. The minute I lift off the pedal, meaning all the way off the pedal, and I mean that, if I'm going down a hill and my foot is resting on that gas pedal, there's a very, very good chance that my decompression system or my Jake brake is not going to turn on. So definitely realize that you're resting your foot on the gas pedal, the Jake brake is off. As soon as you are off the Jake brake, and I move my foot all the way over to the brake pedal. So I drive one-footed in these trucks. My right foot is everything. If I am holding my right foot over the brake pedal, my Jake brake is working. If I'm resting it on my gas pedal, not only is my Jake brake 50% chance that it's not on, but I have to move my foot in an emergency to go to the brake pedal. So anytime you're utilizing that Jake brake and going down the hill, I'd like your foot not pressing the brake pedal. You don't have to actuate the brakes, but you could be ready to hit the brakes if anything. Let's say the Jake brake system fails. You're going down a hill, it's worked halfway down, you've got another 100 feet to go and it just stops. You don't want your foot resting on the accelerator pedal like old grandma driving through the front of 7-Eleven. You're going to forget where your feet are and you're going to add acceleration to this and increase the speed going downhill. And flipping these things over sideways is one thing. Crashing this sucker at a high speed, you're going to get hurt. I don't care whether your seatbelt's on or not. It's a rough ride in this sucker. So that being said, I want to show you how I'm going to dump. Just like we talked about in the excavator, I'm going to apply my my transmission is in neutral. Now I'm going to raise the bed of my truck. Number one point I'd like to make, and I see this happen a lot, and I'm going to make this point with conditions, let's say. My job site, my understanding, my rules that I've been taught my entire life is to not raise this bed while moving. That circumstance can go out the window if your boss or your owner of your company changes the direction of what he or she would like you to be doing. But in safety, safety in mind, I'd like you to come to a complete stop, whether it's in front of the pit that I'm dumping in right now or in front of the dozer blade. If you're dumping in front of the dozer, I want you to come to a complete stop. I do not want you trying to save 6 seconds and raising this bed as you're coming towards the dozer. Again, I'm from Florida. So the reason I don't want you to do this, and it can happen with frozen material too, not only can it stick in the bed, it could slide out of the bed with vengeance. So not only do I not want to be moving backwards and raising the bed, obviously for danger and extra pin wear, if I'm backing up and the bed is up in the air, the bed's going to be doing this and prematurely wearing out the cylinder pins and the pins that are holding the bed attached to the frame in the back. But not only that, and I've had this circumstance happen to me in the field. A long time ago when I was an off-road truck driver, I thought I was helping everybody by raising the bed, getting that stuff to launch out of the truck, and I was already leaving before all the dirt came out of the truck. But what happened to me one day, as I was doing that, I didn't realize that the hoe man or the hoe operator or excavator operator went from taking a top bench in the lake to going back down into the rim ditch. And the rim ditch is where the outside of the pond where we're going to be digging, it's the muck and all the watery dirt. So what my operator did that I didn't know is he changed from good dirt to slop. Obviously, he put a tailgate in my truck or a pad of fresh, nice dirt to hold the slop in, but he didn't tell me that, and he doesn't have to. I don't need to communicate with him per load. I was backing up very fast, got the bed up to about a 30-degree, 40-degree angle and slammed on the brakes. When the load came out of the back of my truck, not only did it smack into the dozer blade with way too much force, but it also shoved the dozer off of the bench that he was sitting in or on and moved him back about 15 to 20 feet. I didn't hurt anybody. No equipment was damaged, but you can understand that that was the moment where I never did that again. So depending on what material you have and what your boss is instructing you to do, I'd like you to only utilize speeding up or production wise if somebody tells you to. Keep it as safe as possible until somebody starts telling you to ramp this up. Number two, same function, parking brake off, truck in drive. I'm going to pull up the length of my truck, 15, 20, 30 feet, put the parking brake back on, put the truck back into neutral. And I know this seems crazy, but this is the safest way. Again, also premature wear we're taking out of the picture. If I'm driving over to this excavator that I'm about to get loaded and I have the bed up, not only can I go under power lines and rip power lines down on this job site, but I could, in 2 days of doing that or even a day of doing that over and over again, we're going to have to call a mechanic and down this truck to fix all the problems we have because I've overly worked my machine.
So Gary, I would say it comes down to site conditions. It comes down to the operator's experience. Comes down to the materials that we're moving. Again, if it's muddy, whatever, we're not going to have you moving at any time with a load on at all. But there's also instances where it's real dry, real sandy, comes out of the bed real fast. We've had operators take off and lower the bed as you're driving away. It's just going to be up to, like Gary said, up to the boss, up to the foreman, up to the owner, how they would like their trucks kept. And I would also encourage you guys to come and do some training. I mean, that's what this is for. You guys can get a feel for how these trucks work, how the Jake brakes work. He was talking a lot about keeping your foot on and off the accelerator, things like that. It comes with experience, and you can't just throw just any monkey on it. You've got to get some experience and at least some training. So come see us at Next Gen. We'll get you trained up.
Absolutely. So now that I've put the bed all the way to the ground or down onto the frame, parking brake comes off, then I go into drive. And what me and the guys are talking about is, there's always going to be a scenario to where things change. But if you start your day and your scenarios with the safest way possible, you're never going to fail. If you start the day with the most dangerous way of dumping and just trying to overly work machines, that's not the way to do it. Let your boss speed you up, if you will. Let me listen for this horn. Parking brake on, truck in neutral. Again, making note of slowing down there, waiting for the horn, opening the windows, turning the radio down. And I'm not talking about doing that after we've parked, okay? So if I come up to this excavator and I have the radio on and the windows closed, just like we were talking about in the excavator in the lake, it doesn't matter whether he's sitting on this bench or loading in a lake. If I can't hear that horn, I'm going to continue to drive too far for him to reach, then have to readjust. Again, we're turning a 2-minute job into a 20-minute job by readjusting and moving all over the place. So I definitely want windows open, radio down. Make sure you can hear the horn or any audio directions that are going to come your way. Also, just as we backed up to that area or the pit that I call it to dump, definitely going to make a point to where even if the dozer man says you're good to dump, I'm going to make it a point to inspect my area that I'm going into before, just like that lake I talked about. We're going to stare at my dumping point before I go and back into that little area. The other thing we're going to manage is getting the bed as flat as possible on the ground or even on the terrain, not leaning one way or the other. These trucks, depending on how, what the gentleman behind me were talking, depending on what material we're talking about, if we're talking about good old topsoil, he could put a turtle shell on this truck that's 15 feet higher than the bed rail of the truck, and I could be having serious tipping issues even on flat ground. So you can imagine if I have it leaned 10 degrees to the left or to the right, start raising the bed up, well, she's going over. So I want you to absolutely manage your own truck. That's very important. Like I said, if the dozer operator honks the horn and says dump it and my bed is leaning over 20 degrees to the right, I'm not dumping it. I know he wants it there. I know he said it's fine. It's not his job. It's my job. So I'm going to pull up. I'm going to reset. I know where he wants the dirt. And this is the only instance to where you're not wasting time. You're saving time. If you flip the truck over, it's going to take hours to get the hoe to come out of the lake, come over, grab the truck, flip it up, and that's if the truck is fine. If you readjust for the dozer, this is going to take 2 minutes, and everyone's continuing through their day.
That's a good point, Gary. I think as a haul truck operator or as any operator, you got to hold yourself accountable. If you're the one running that machine, you're going to be the one that's accountable for it. You can't just say, well, so-and-so told me to do that.
Absolutely.
It's not work that way. So just keep it in mind.
If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Get out and ask. Okay, so this is the fun part. This is the part that every off-road truck driver dreads, and that's backing up around corners, up hills, and long distances. But it's not that hard. A lot of you guys are girls that might be watching this program, whether it's right now or even on YouTube later. If you've ever tried to back up a trailer in a truck, that's very, very hard to do and requires some skills and some training and, a knowledge of what's going on. The haul truck on the other side of things is kind of exactly like backing up your car, and I think it's even easier. As I'm going backwards right now, I am literally driving this truck as if I was sitting on the tailgate facing backwards. If I use my mirrors, the way I want to turn is the exact way you should turn on this versus the truck and trailer situation. So if I want to turn left, my butt goes left. If I want to turn right, my butt goes right. It's as simple as that. Now, it is sort of cumbersome to learn this method versus, the truck and trailer, but if you have any skills at all with a truck and trailer or even parallel parking a car, you can darn sure back up an off-road dump truck. Even though this thing is like driving a small condo down the road full of dirt, it's just your visuals and your uncomfortability with the machine. Once you get in here, start to get the familiarization of what the truck's going to do, and what the feelings are when it's getting too leany or about to flip over. That's all going to be coming with time, and your body language is going to I think I was only in the haul truck for maybe a couple of hours with a gentleman before they turned me loose. And honestly, within a half a day, I had this, I don't want to call it mastered, but I had it figured out. I had the flow between me and the machine, or the marriage between me and the machine. As I was going around corners and taking things at higher speed than some other people, I was comfortable with that, knowing what the truck can and can't do. So I'd like you to learn that throughout your life in the off-road truck, but also keeping in mind those safety topics that we said. Not backing up and raising the bed at the same time. Like we said, start with the safest way possible, and then let your boss tell you otherwise. So just like I told you before, parking brake is on, truck is in neutral. The other thing that I'd like to mention, our audio is turned down on the sim right now, but I am full throttle, or fully floored, if you will, or the accelerator pedal is all the way down while I'm raising the bed and lowering the bed. So we've made a couple topics throughout this session today about not raising it while we're moving. So what I'm going to do to kind of even out the playing field, if you will, if I'm raising it while I'm moving, obviously I'm dumping fast and speeding up production. But I can also do it safely, stopping completely, putting on my parking brake, and utilizing the accelerator pedal to speed up the hydraulic actuator of the bed, or raising and lowering the bed. So what I don't want you to do is this. You can see on my right mirror, the bed is slowly going up. That is with no throttle. As soon as I add throttle to it, it greatly increases, and I might be speaking out of turn, but I would say 100% faster than without the throttle pedal pressed down. So this is how I'm, if you will, I'm evening out the odds. I'm not doing anything dangerous as far as raising the bed and driving away with the bed up and lowering it down while I'm driving over to the next site, but I'm utilizing the accelerator and raising the bed as fast as possible in the situation where I'm dumping. So raising it full throttle, move forward the length of the truck, lowering it full throttle, then we're going to move out and do the cycle again.
So Gary, one more thing to keep in mind is the size of these trucks. They range from anywhere from maybe a 30 ton to 60 ton in commercial applications. In mining applications, they can get a lot larger than 60 ton. And that's a lot of dirt to be hauling around and to be dumping. That's a lot of weight, and the machine's being used very hard. So just keep in mind, your throttle application and how you're dumping these trucks. Just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. So now we're going to come down to the shutdown area, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to shut this machine down. Just like we did the pre-walk around, we're going to do an after session or after work walk around or inspection. And we're also going to allow enough idle time to cool everything down, and I'm going to explain that in just a moment. So just for parking purposes, I'm going to pretend like it's the end of the day, and I'm going to show you some reasons or explanations of how we're going to park this through the day. So I've completed my 8 or 10 hour shift, however long it is through the day, and there's an excavator here sitting next to me. This excavator guy, let's pretend he's on the flat ground right next to me. I want to answer the question of, why do you drive past job sites and you see all of the machines lined up in one row? Why are they all coupled together? Why don't I just park the truck wherever I'm finished or closer to my car so I don't have to walk a half a mile to my car? Well, there's 2 reasons for this. Number one is obviously safety. There's safety in numbers, if you will. Even though these machines aren't people, you have a likelihood of getting less damage done to your vehicles at night if they are all coupled together in a big group, all in the open. You don't want to hide these things in trees. You're going to have smashed out windows, and little kids come over all the time. I've had presents in my seat by leaving my door unlocked accidentally. Number two reason why we're going to park the whole fleet in a row is for fuel and lube purposes. My crew in Florida, as well as the gentlemen that are behind me, we have not only, if it's a big site, we'll have fuel trucks come, but we might have fuel drums. It doesn't matter how you're going to fuel, whether it's out of the truck or the drum, but lining all these things up in a row, when the grease man comes, or the lube truck, he can grease all of these machines, or as many of these machines as possible, with moving his truck the fewest amount of times possible. So if there's 5 vehicles parked in a row, or pieces of equipment parked in a row, the lube man or woman could park right in the center of all these, pull all of it here or she's hoses out, and take care of the maintenance on these pieces of equipment. So you're helping the next stage of the operation, if you will. So just like you might have an asphalt crew and a dirt crew, I don't want you to ever get into the cycle of, I don't care about who's coming after me. Not only am I cleaning up after the asphalt crew, if we're all in the same company, I'm helping the lube guys. So this is all just to help out our company. My same company man, even though he's not on my crew, is coming to fuel and lube this machine tonight, and I want to make it as easy for him or her as possible and as quick for him or her as possible. If he or she is driving around this site for 5 hours going to each individual piece of equipment, we've wasted all the time we just made up with killing it during the day with our production. So before we shut this machine off, we're going to do exactly what we did earlier in the day or this morning. We're going to park this on flat level ground. That's important. We're going to make sure our bed is all the way down. All of our hydraulics are off. All of our functions are off. Now, this is the only time throughout the day, other than when I'm loaded or fully loaded, that I'm going to take the bed out of the float position and put it back into the hold position. I do not want to fire this truck up in the morning with the bed in the float position. I don't have any reasons for that. I just have particular ways I'd like my joystick set for the end of the day. So when I come in the morning, I don't have to move anything. There's nothing that I have to check. So I'm pre-planning or pre-setting myself up for tomorrow morning's pre-work inspection, if you will. I'm setting it up as much as possible for the easiest pre-inspection in the morning. Lastly, before I shut this machine off, while it's idling, and I'm going to explain why we're letting this idle for so long, now is the time to where I'm going to do my maintenance, which is the in the cab maintenance. Not only is it time to clean the windows, or even throughout the day, if the windows get dirty, if we're loading slop like we were talking about a little while ago, if anything's splattering or coming over the headache rack in the back and painting the windows, we're going to get out and keep our windows clean. Also, at the end of the day, yeah, and mirrors. Very good. Thank you, Nate. Mirrors also. By cleaning all my stuff at the end of the day, everything doesn't have a chance to harden or settle or set throughout the night. So I don't have to come with a razor blade in the morning and scrape my mirrors off and scrape my windows off. Right now, as everything is sloppy, wet, or moist or fresh, if you will, I can literally take a water bottle and dump it down my windshield and my windows, and it will take all the sediment off, or paper towels and Windex. But right now is going to be substantially easier, especially in our climate. If it's going to freeze tonight and I come in the morning, you're going to hate yourself scraping all this stuff off and trying to clean these windows. Okay, so let's try and do as much tonight to set ourselves up for success in the morning. So now I'm going to explain the reason why we've let this idle the whole time we're cleaning our cab, sweeping our floor, dusting all our joysticks and everything off. I want you to treat this cab as if you spent $1 million on this machine. You taking care of this cab every time your foreman, your superintendent, your hoe operator climbs up in the cab, they're going to be elated by being able to see that you could eat off the floor in this thing. That's going to move you out of this machine, and I don't know if you want to be in this machine the whole time you're doing this career, or if you have dreams of moving up. But starting in the off-road truck as what I consider the open door into the big dog equipment, I started in this. I skipped labor, went straight into the cockpit seat of this, rode for 2 hours. After the 2 hours, I was in there with my own AC/DC blaring and my own ham sandwich. From then on, for 2 years, I ran this truck. 2 things happened to get me to move up. One, I studied every other piece of equipment while I was in this haul truck every single day. While I'm getting loaded with the excavator, I was watching the mirrors on the excavator or out of my truck. I was watching the excavator. What is he or she doing? Why is he or she doing that? And I would ask questions to he or she at the end of the day for those explanations. The same thing with the dozer man. I'm not just backing up blindly to the dozer man, dumping it and saying, I'll see you in 10 minutes. I'm backing up to the dozer man and I'm watching out of my mirrors as I'm driving away. What's he doing with that dirt? Why is he having me back up on another bench? Why are we stacking it up? How much lift or how high of lifts is he putting in? I was able to prematurely learn the next step in this truck and get myself ready for the minute the excavator was open seat. I jumped into the excavator with all the knowledge that I needed, or somewhat of the knowledge that I needed to at least continue moving our yardage throughout the day.
Gary, you better not be eating ham sandwiches in that truck.
Yes.
So I know you're talking about shutdown and stuff, but because of the way you're sitting in your machine there, as Nate had mentioned, we hold our operators accountable. Your hoe operator should know better than to load over the cab. But if you ever pull up to an excavator like that, you need to stop and ask questions. Don't let them swing over your cab. That is extremely dangerous.
Absolutely. There is zero reason to swing anything, empty bucket or not. What he's referring to doesn't just qualify with a full bucket. 99% of the excavators that I run nowadays, at least, have automatic detach buckets. So I can take the bucket off and I can spin it around backwards, or I can throw a different attachment on. Everything has a failing point, ladies and gentlemen. So if I was to swing even an empty bucket over the cab, I know it would be lottery odds that it would come unhooked, but I'm not willing to bet lottery odds on Danny's life.
So on that same note, excuse me, Gary, but I just want to bring up, if you do find yourself in some sort of situation, a tricky spot, something is just not right, just stop and let somebody know what's going on. They can help you guide you through it. And, don't make the situation worse. Okay. That's what I'm really getting at. Thanks.
Absolutely. And don't be shy. This is dog eat dog. I know on a job site, everyone's shy on a job site, but there's no reason to be. There is nothing you can say or ask or, get demoed for you that's going to be stupid. If you don't know, you don't know. And I use that term a lot. I learned everything the minute I learned it. I didn't know it 5 minutes before that. So like they were talking about, I know the boss might get pissed off, but it's going to save lives and save accidents and save money. So, and I'm not even worried about the money. I'm worried about the lives. So if you don't know, like he said, get out and ask. Stop everybody, stop for 5 minutes, and let's get a game plan. So without further ado, why have we been letting this machine idle this entire time we've been blabbing along? Well, that's one big feature on these machines is the cool down feature. All of these machines, I don't want to say all of them, but 99% of these machines are turbo diesels. Having a turbo on any engine, whether it be the excavator that's sitting next to me or the haul truck that we're talking about right now, or even the loader, motor grader on down the road, they all have turbo diesel engines. The turbo itself is cooled down by the engine oil going through the system and the coolers and coming back through the turbo. If I end my day's session with just pulling up here and killing the key, my turbo is at 400,000 degrees with no cooling mechanism going through it or no fluid. Some of them have water or radiator fluid and oil. Some just have oil. Doesn't matter which one you have. You're never going to know that more than likely, but you're going to let them cool down for at least 20 to 30 minutes before we do a shutdown procedure. This is going to, again, just like the pins and bushings in the back of the truck, not raising the bed, this is going to make it so I don't have to call Danny in 6 months and say, hey, buddy, I need another turbo, and then another turbo, and then another turbo. It's not necessarily the cost of the parts that's the problem. It's the downtime. The downtime is what's costing us all the money. So now that I've cooled down completely, I'm going to shut my machine off. I've cleaned my cab. My windows are clean. Now the final thing we're going to do is an after work or post-work inspection. I'm going to get out of the cab, and as I get out of the cab, I'm inspecting all of my controls to make sure I didn't screw anything up, nothing's broken, all the switches are fine. I have no service engine lights. And now I'm coming out of the cab, I'm going to lock the cab door because we're not coming back up the steps again. As I'm going down the steps and working my way around the truck, we're inspecting as we go. I don't want you to waste your time coming down to the bottom of the truck, then climbing back up to inspect the windows, mirrors, cameras, lights, then coming back down. Let's do it from bottom to top as we leave, and from top to bottom as we leave. In the morning, we go from bottom to top as we get into the cab. So also, I would like you to, as an operator, start writing down your inspection procedure for the morning and following the exact same inspection procedure. Unless you add more inspection points, I'd like you to do the exact same inspection in the exact same order every single week, every single day. I don't want you to come check the left tire today first, then the right tire tomorrow. I want you to make a plan, do the same plan every time, and you'll never miss a point. I hope today will help you guys that are interested, or girls, in the off-road truck. Or if you're already in the off-road truck, I hope this will help improve your productivity for your company. Thank you guys very much for joining us again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey, Gary, one last thing I'd like to mention, because it's the easiest machine to do it in, even though I say this every time. 3 points of contact. When you're coming down those stairs, it's really easy to come down facing the wrong way, and it's a terrible idea. Bad weather, those steps get extremely slippery. Always use 3 points of contact on all the equipment.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying, and I was told this 100,000 times when I was a young buck, don't jump. My back hurts. I'm 37 and it hurts. And I did all that stuff the wrong way. And I know some people are going to do that. But like I said, start with the safest procedures possible and you're never going to go wrong. Do everything the right way and overly cautious with this size machinery. It's just too big to make mistakes. And I don't mean the small machines are. This particular machine and the excavator, all three machines that would tie to this, the excavator, the off-road truck, and the dozer you'd be working with, are way too big to be cutting corners or making mistakes. Let's do it as safe as possible. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.